What's one piece of advice you wish someone gave you when you first started out in your career?
I think for me it was about leadership. I think for me I've been working in live ops for about 16 years now. I have 12 of those ones or 13 of those ones. I've been a manager or head or director of certain things, and it's for me kind of when you lead teams and when you lead projects or deliverables, it's really, really difficult to do that if you don't really know how to be effective as a leader, if that makes sense. So for me, it was always about there were a couple of rules that I was taught initially, and then kind of trying to follow myself as well when it comes down to leadership. I think the first one is kind of, it feels common knowledge or common sense, but kind of for me it's kind of being sincere and being kind and kind of letting people speak and listening to what they have to say, no matter who they are and what pecking order or anything like that, but they want to kind of get through and understand what you want to do with them. And communicate in a way that kind of builds awareness of what your objectives or the needs are, being very clear what you're trying to achieve. And because if you can't make people aware of what it is and how to accomplish those goals, you stand no chance as a leader to kind of provide the right information behind it. And then for me also negotiating effectively, which means when you need to know kind of when you need to push or when you back off on certain things, understand what is a really non-negotiable thing in your delivery of an objective, for example, and which ones can you work on or find compromise on, for example. Use power thoughtfully. Just because you're manager or director or head or lead or anything like that doesn't mean you should wield it like this is me, I'm a dictator. Never do that, and absolutely try and avoid it unless absolutely necessary, i.e. in a crisis. Share resources, and that means if somebody needs help, make connections for them, support them, find information with them, find information for them, get an SME or matter expert involved to help with that as well. Don't ever say, you go figure it out, because that's quite harsh, especially when people are coming in new together for a project, or they don't know each other or don't know you. Try and provide guidance. And if you don't know something, be honest, say, I do not know, let's figure it out together, or let's find out the answer together. Show that you're part of this delivery as well, obviously. And then also kind of learn to manage conflict in any kind of organization like this, especially when there's bigger teams and stuff like that. You need to be in a position where you can say, appreciating the opposing view. What's on the table? What's the disagreement? What's the problem? Where is mutual agreement in that? And how do you mediate between mutual agreement and disagreement to figure out the next step in getting things together? Because ultimately you're all in it together and you want to deliver the right thing, obviously, but you need people to buy in. I think those kind of points for me, especially when I started as a manager initially, they were quite hard to run on the go. And if I had a mentor at the time to kind of give me that guidance, it would have made many, many conversations initially much, much easier for me.
You covered a lot of ground there, like within management. I think that last point especially, like if you had a mentor, you could have maybe learned that not so much the hard way, which from the side of it, that could have taken years to like piece all these different tips together. So like definitely big up getting a mentor. And
yeah. I think having somebody kind of in your level or in your discipline or in your field, being a mentor, especially if they have done the job for a little bit longer than you, is really useful. And I found the level of engagement through a mentor helping you, kind of guiding you, is really, really good. They're not here to kind of tell you what to do. They're here to kind of challenge you and kind of push you forward, right? And I've been a mentor now for many, many people over the last 5-10 years even. And giving that kind of experience back is super valuable, not only to me, but also to those who hopefully receive it. And if I had that myself, it may have changed my career in different kind of ways.
Sure. Given that you're a mentor for so many people, if there was someone who was in your position 10 years ago and they were looking for a mentor like yourself, any like one thing that they should keep in the back of their mind, like when they're looking for a mentor?
Think of what you're trying to achieve. So why do you want a mentor? Is the mentor here to somewhat accelerate the path in your career growth? Or are they here to kind of make your current role a bit more understandable, a bit easier, a bit better to navigate, for example. I think if I look at the latter, the kind of making my life right now easier to navigate with the people, the team, the project, etc., that adds much more value because it's immediately applicable, right? Compared to a mentor who might kind of talk to you about career guidance over a number of years. That's also really useful, don't get me wrong. But I think personally for me right now, that secondary mentor kind of giving me the kind of here and now and how can I navigate the here and now is in many cases much more useful. And if I look at kind of last year about the mentorships I've given about 70 mentors or so last year, or mentees last year, it was largely about that, breaking into the industry, or right now kind of I'm doing this, I don't know how to do this properly, or I could do some guidance kind of how to do this or that or anything like that. Those ones were really valuable conversations for me.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your career which shaped your journey and what lessons you learned?
Yeah, so we talked a little about this in the previous kind of conversation we had about kind of what is remote working and how do you kind of work together, for example. I think for me, what was kind of the biggest kind of change for me was kind of when I changed from being a team lead of about 20 people to being a leader of over 200 worldwide. That was a complete scale change. It was this newer development. It was different skill set, different experiences, different working cultures, and different expectations in what they were trying to do. So for me, I had to learn this quite quickly and kind of how to kind of do that and how to kind of do this kind of management. And that for me kind of came a almost a multi-part challenge of either you sink or swim, or you deliver all these things together, or maybe replace yourself with somebody else who could do that. And so for me, kind of the this moment was kind of all about kind of taking stock of kind of what's actually happening, where are the projects, what's being delivered, who's doing what, who's dependent on what, everything like that, getting the kind of true picture of what's going on. And then identifying also the leaders or the people who know in those different teams, in those different time zones, of who worked with those people before even I came on board. And working with them to understand kind of what's actually being worked on, what's happening, what's at risk, what's good, what's bad, everything like that. And then building up a structure of kind of how do you kind of communicate with that many people, and how do you understand daily or weekly or per sprint where the teams are, building a scrum, etc., or having like a working systems where you kind of create leaders that teach other leaders on how to do that. So again, kind of my learning from kind of how I became a good manager, trying to apply that to those people to see kind of how they can kind of communicate with their teams better, downwards, but then also upwards to the stakeholders and me and everybody else, kind of seeing what's actually going on. And that was pivotal for me, because that all of a sudden made the change from being quite narrow in a way to really thinking about wider, about working with people you may never ever meet, in time zones you would never ever travel to, but all delivering to the same thing, or delivering the same project, the same thing, everything like that. And that was really cool and really kind of eye-opening on how that can be done. And thankfully at that point I had a mentor. So thankfully I had this kind of understanding of kind of how to do that. And my mentor back then was actually the CTO of the company, who said to me, okay, we could do this, we could do that. Let's focus on the kind of building blocks of kind of what the actual challenges are, what these teams deliver, and then work up, and then work up, and then work up. And that kind of really helped me. Right now I've got smaller teams obviously again, but having understood kind of how distribution, how kind of this kind of work works, and how people kind of work together that have different expectations, different objectives, different leaders, and different kind of business units that might require their intention as well, has been really useful.
So you went from 20 people to 200 people. So just so I understand, are those direct reports?
Yes and no. The majority were, but some of them, the way they were working was they were part of a business unit that was aligned to my project. So they were managed by somebody else, but I was doing the day-to-day, effectively. I was responsible for the delivery for the day-to-day or for that particular project in mind.
So on that amount of scale, especially remotely, like you mentioned, like you kind of need to know what's happening on a daily basis, otherwise you can easily get lost. So I'm just wondering, like practically, how did you do that? Is there just like open Slack channels going around? Is there like, there's 200 people to me, it's like
yeah.
huge number.
Yeah, so we had exactly that. So we used Teams back then. So we had Teams channels for all these kind of things with deliverables within that, and we had producers and project managers and program managers who effectively kind of planned the feature development and dependencies for me in a very heavy gunshot style kind of view. We used Jira, obviously. We used Project for Jira for that to help us with that, obviously, as well. But then I had a truly amazing Scrum Master who was really good at kind of enforcing and reinforcing the rituals around kind of how we plan, how we retrospect, how we deliver, how we review and everything like that. And putting that rigor in, especially at that size, was super useful from the start, or at the start, for me to get to know people, but also kind of get the project into a better place effectively. And then also, once everybody kind of understood what the process was and how we worked and how communication channels worked, everybody kind of slowly fell into that as well. And then it was just running and just working. When I say that, we're talking here 6 months. You know, it wasn't an overnight kind of thing. It took time to get everybody on board. But it was super useful, and we delivered everything we needed to, obviously. But you are right, it required good communication, and more importantly, especially when there's different teams around the globe doing stuff for you, understand dependencies, understanding who's the effectively single ringable neck that you have to talk to figure out how we can accelerate an issue, for example. And yeah, that was kind of where it went to.
How do you approach those challenges in your professional life, and do you have any like strategies to overcome them?
So for me, it's kind of always about kind of trying to figure out kind of understanding the objective or the goal that was set in the first place. What was it we were trying to achieve? I think that's the important thing, to kind of figure out kind of where the setback was, or where you kind of failed. Failed is the wrong word, kind of, you know, where it didn't succeed in the way you wanted it to be, for example. If it was a failure in delivery or project or process or anything like that, try and learn as quickly as you can from it. What could have gone better? What was missing? What did we need more of? Try and avoid the who question, because the second you avoid who is involved, who's at fault, everything like that, it causes friction. It causes the entire process to fail, because the second you do that, people kind of shield themselves up and back up and get defensive for something that is effectively us trying to figure out how can we fail fast, succeed fast, and hopefully succeed more than we fail, obviously, right? So what we then kind of tend to do, or what I tend to kind of do, is kind of figure out, okay, what is a better way for us to have maybe checkpoints in place to check in how things are going in a better kind of way, or have different kind of questions being asked. And then kind of involving, especially Grip Assembly and Sega, during that time working with them, was looking more at a gating process of figuring out kind of what the objectives were. What are the activities we're trying to focus on? What's the content? What's the feature set we want to deliver in this particular kind of milestone or delivery or update or anything like that? And as the performance target to go with it as well. Performance here both in terms of hardware and software, obviously, but also in terms of marketing or user acquisition or community, anything like that. To really put people together and kind of saying this is all about us. A game development is not just about a production team, right? It's about QA, it's about release management, publishing, it's community, support, marketing, brand, PR, social. They all play a role in delivery. So making sure the game process involves all of them makes us all, again, responsible and accountable for us as well, obviously. And then also being a bit more clear, especially in the future, about kind of how or what are the dependencies. So if you want to kind of succeed better, identify better kind of what is dependent on a particular thing. Are you working on a particular project, for example, on a particular central service, for example, whatever it might be? Figure out what these are and then put them also into your gating process to see kind of how we can check these in, how we can check that are being done, who can help, who can support, and do you have to kind of steal a person from a different team to help for a little while? Whatever it might be. I think for that, that's kind of where we're going to be when it comes to the setbacks. What's happened? How do we learn from it? Focus on the what, not the who. Focus on the how for delivery, and focus on gating and setting clearer objectives or setting better checkpoints to hopefully kind of overcome that challenge from the previous time we did it.
How do we keep this knowledge not in our brains and like in the company, if that makes sense? So when you learn from a challenge like this, if you focus on the what, you could update a process. But I feel like
Precisely.
it's so complicated game development. So is it as simple as that? Could you just update the process and then kind of like learning unlocked for the studio? Like, how do we internalize these learnings?
That's a really good question, and it depends on the team or the studio you're working with. Obviously, in studios I worked in, post-mortems are being shared, or largely being shared on what's being happening. Depends on kind of what we're talking about. If it was a bad release, maybe not, because it's to that particular project, for example. If it's a wider process thing about kind of how customer support works, or community, or brand, or releasing, or QA works, different conversation, obviously. So it depends on the context. Having post-mortems visible is always useful. Not always the right thing to do. Sometimes they can be weaponized by people, or you should have been better with this, or this person sucked, or anything like that. So we're trying to avoid sometimes the kind of the clarity on these ones on occasion. But it's more about kind of making sure that, as you say, if the process needs to change, that those who run the process understand what the process has changed for, and then also then maybe in next release's time figuring out, okay, we had this process change, is it now working? As in genuinely checking on kind of the changes we have made and seeing whether they actually moved the needle in a better way or not. If you just say, oh, we changed the process, it was changed, nobody likes the process anymore because it's now much more convoluted, we're getting things done despite that, okay, there's still something wrong then. So how can we kind of fix that process as well? Checking in what happened and then reviewing with the previous dates that we have is always useful in that kind of way.
So I love that. Also, like, you can fix a problem with another problem, right?
Yes.
Like, if you fix it by making it super convoluted and people hate to work, then you have potentially bigger problem where people...
Exactly.
That's a ticking time bomb, right?
Yeah.
Lovely. So I have a curious, this is just a random question, because I know you have built an amazing brand on LinkedIn, and I know from speaking to people that some people are actually interested in doing it. So this is just an extra question from me. So is there anything you'd suggest from a networking perspective that people could do on LinkedIn? So this is for potentially, let's say I'm a developer and I'm actively employed, but I'm just looking to build up my LinkedIn brand. Is there anything that you would recommend this person to do?
Sure. So the way you would do it is have a think around and seeing what other people post in your discipline anyway, in the first instance. If you're a developer, for example, say Unreal developer, see what other people post about Unreal development as a whole, as a discipline on a topic and everything like that. And then start connecting. And connecting here isn't just about adding a connection request, it's about engaging with their topic, asking questions, commenting, resharing, for example, are always useful things to kind of grow a connection in the first place, because it shows you're not here for the number of followers or connections, you are here to kind of make a meaningful engagement in your field with like-minded people. And that's the first thing I would do. The benefit we have in LinkedIn at the moment over the last year and a half has been there are many online events or chat events or podcasts like you and I have right now and things like that that talk about particular subjects. Listen to them, follow them, search for them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has sometimes an awful search, but try and make an effort, and then grow your understanding and grow your connection as well. And then don't forget to post yourself about that subject you want to talk about that thing that interests you. Because the moment people understand that you're not just a listener or a reader or a liker or anything like that, but also talk about this kind of stuff, also engage with people in that kind of way, also comment, also have similar interests, for example, all of a sudden you grow organically. All of a sudden you grow with people who want to work with you in that kind of field, in that kind of area, who might have a new job for you in the future. You never know. Or who might share the latest and greatest that you wouldn't even know about yet.
For sure. And one thing I'd add, just to give people a bit more fuel to the fire, is like most people who post consistently on LinkedIn have an offer or something that they need to sell. So you have an extra advantage because you're one of the people who don't have that. You literally, usually, if you're just actively employed and a developer, you're posting to LinkedIn to educate, inspire, entertain, and that comes with like just that organic on kind of, it puts fuels to that organic growth. So there's very few people, I think 0.5% have creator mode turned on, but there's a lot of people that actually engage. And one thing that LinkedIn has that pretty much no other social media has is pretty much everyone's verified. So you don't get much hate. Like pretty much everyone's verified. You can see where they've worked from. So if there's any social media where you can post, and if you're afraid of like backlash, like LinkedIn's one of the nicest places ever, pretty much. And so, I'd second everything you said in terms of the networking part specifically. Do not connect for connecting's sake. Have those conversations. And I mean, I've only started posting regularly since October. I don't know about yourself, but since then, I've now kind of hit a bit of a momentum in the new year. I think there's a lot more people on this year LinkedIn. I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot more energy, and I've already had loads of opportunities to do podcasts and stuff, and all I started doing was just talking about what I was doing anyway at work. And I think anyone, when you're making content, you can just go with that mindset of like, I'm just going to document what's been happening, the learnings I've made, talk to you for myself. You do not have to overcomplicate it. That's one thing I was trying to do. I was trying to make these massive blog posts of like, here's all the lessons, and I was like, don't have to pain yourself.
Keep it simple, keep it clean. Yeah,
exactly. That's my one advice. Like, please, one message for one person, and you can sleep better at night.
Very true. And as I said, be genuine. This is about kind of you sharing information and what you want to do. This is not about you must be a brand, you must be this, you must be that. No. Do what makes you happy. Do what you like to talk about. You don't have to post about a subject you don't want to, because this is your limit. This is your network. This is what you want to do. And one important message, as you say, be kind. LinkedIn is a very, very good network, and it's a very supportive network. But please remain that. We don't want to become a Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. LinkedIn is here for professionals to connect and to engage and support each other and also challenge each other, right? And let's keep that going. And I think if you start new in LinkedIn, you'll find some people you want to follow and connect with and discuss with, and don't feel pressure to force connect. Don't feel pressure to kind of have a conversation going if you don't want to. This is all about you and yourself.